Head to your local grocery store, grab a bag or two of oranges, and let's make some Christmas crafts. Recently, I bought a few oranges and they weren't that great. They didn't have a ton of flavor and they weren't super juicy. And instead of wasting them, I thought, why not dry them out and turn them into some decorations, which is a great way to transition from your fall decorations into Christmas. I started by taking some of these oranges and I just started slicing them down to about 1/8 to 1/4 inch slices. There are two ways to dry out orange slices. You can either use the oven in your home, you can take your slices and lay them out on a baking sheet with some parchment paper. Preheat your oven to 200 degrees and check on them about every 20 to 30 minutes. Give them a flip now and then until they're completely dried out. The second method for drying out your orange slices is to use a dehydrator. I already had one of these on hand, so I was able to use the one I had. I did look on Amazon and they still make this same model, so I will link that below if you're interested in a dehydrator. The nice thing about the one that I have is it has several trays, so you can lay out quite a few slices on the different trays. And also on the lid, it has a guide and it tells you what temperature you need to set it at for the different things that you're dehydrating. So on this one, you can see fruits and vegetables. You need to set it for 135 degrees. And I just let these dry out for a few hours, checking on them in between until they were completely dry. The timing will vary no matter what method you use, depending on how juicy the oranges are and how thick you slice them. I also wanted to show you here that drying them out in the oven did create a darker look to the orange slices, which I was okay with. I like the different colors that the oranges came out. I also ended up using two different kinds of oranges because, like I said, I had a few in my fridge that were the Cara oranges that I didn't care for, and then I did buy another bag of navel oranges. So each of those dried out at different colors too, which I was okay with. To get started on making a wreath for our orange slices, I'm taking one of these wood bead wreath forms that I found at the Dollar Tree. I was really excited to see these because I think they're so pretty. I love the darker bead color on this one, and I love that the wreath is already formed for you. I'm going to use some of my orange slices, also some picks of winter greenery, and a roll of ribbon that I got from the Dollar Tree in the plus section. To get started, I'm going to lay down a few pieces of the greenery to start. I only want my oranges to be on the bottom half of this wreath form, so I wanted to give myself a guide where I needed to lay my orange slices. So I placed one piece of greenery on each side of the wreath so that I knew where I needed to build my orange slices from. I laid my silicone mat underneath because I was afraid some of the hot glue might seep through the beads, just to protect my work surface. Once I had the first two pieces of greenery in place, then I went in with my orange slices and I just started laying them next to each other, going the whole way across the bottom of the wreath form. After my first layer of oranges were glued in place, then I went through and I started adding in some more picks of the same winter greenery in between each of the orange slices. Then I went back in with a second layer of orange slices and I made sure that I overlapped where the first two orange slices met. So where two of the orange slices butted up against each other, I made sure that I put another orange slice over that seam to cover it up. Then I just clipped off a few more little pieces of greenery and tucked them in here and there till I liked how full the wreath was. And this is a great way to customize this wreath. You don't have to use the wood bead wreath form if you don't want to. You could use a regular wreath form and you could build a wreath going around the whole circle with the orange slices, or you could create it to one side or the other, or even across the top. I needed to create a hanger for my wreath, and I also wanted to cover up where the wood beads met because there were just two metal hooks there and I thought it looked a little unfinished. I cut a length of this burlap ribbon that I got from the Dollar Tree. I looped it through where those hooks were, and then I just took a piece of twine and I cinched the two ends together at the top with the twine. I wrapped the twine towards the back of the ribbon and I created a loop so that I could hang it from that loop rather than hanging it from the ribbon. Then to finish off my ribbon hanger, I just used my scissors and I dovetailed the ends. I I have an electric fireplace in my home, and I'm always looking for new ways to create garlands to drape across the front. I went to Michael's and I got a pack of fairy lights. The reason I went to Michael's for fairy lights rather than the Dollar Tree is the ones at Michael's have a timer on them. And that's something that I always look for so that I don't have to keep remembering to turn them on and off. In addition to the fairy lights, I'm also going to use some of these wired garland ties that you can get at the Dollar Tree, some burlap ribbon, and of course my orange slices. The garland ties that I have are about 12 inches long, so I started by folding them into thirds and using my wire cutter to snip them so that I had 3 shorter pieces rather than 1 long piece. Then I got to work stringing my orange slices onto my fairy lights. Now with these fairy lights that I have, there is a bulb at the very end of the light which acts sort of like a pokey tool to poke right through the oranges, but some of them were a little bit thicker, so instead of damaging my light or bending my light trying to poke it through, I did have a big plastic needle on hand. You could also use a barbecue skewer or maybe even a toothpick just to give yourself a little hole to work with so that you can string the fairy lights through. I started on one end of my orange slices and I fed the lights up through the bottom side, and then I crossed it over the top of the orange slice and fed it down through the other side. Once I had 2 of the orange slices on to my fairy lights, I used just a bit of hot glue to hold those 2 slices together, but I made sure that I didn't get the glue on the light itself. And then I took one of those shorter pieces of the garland tie and I just wrapped it around the wire of the fairy light next to my 2 orange slices. I'm going to zoom in here so you can see it a little bit closer. I took the lights up through the bottom of one of the orange slices and then down through the top, and I did that on 2 orange slices. Once they were both together, I used hot glue to glue them together, and then I wrapped my garland tie next to those 2 orange slices, and I just kept continuing this until I came to the end of my lights. Now it's up to you how you want to finish off the ends of your garland. I have command hooks on my fireplace that I wanted to cover up. So for my garland, I am going to create 2 burlap bows just to put one on each end to hide those command hooks. I'm just doing a really simple bow. It's the awareness ribbon style bow where you loop it into the shape of an awareness ribbon and then you cinch it in the center until it all comes together with a piece of twine, and then you just dovetail the ends. I think this garland is really simple and pretty on its own. I love just the oranges and the few pieces of greenery that stick out. But again, you could turn this into anything you'd like. You could add on some wood beads. You could string on some ornaments, some snowflakes, anything that fits your style. I don't have my Christmas tree up yet, but I do want to create a few ornaments for when it's time to decorate it. In addition to the orange slices, I'm going to use a bunch of things that I already have in my stash. Some wooden snowflake shapes, some acorns, I have some little frosted berries, I have some wintry picks and some cinnamon sticks, and of course some ribbon. These ornaments are a lot of fun to make because you can use up some of the little odds and ends that you might have floating around in your Christmas craft stash. I started with just 6 of the orange slices and I wanted to create hangers on all of them first. So some of them I strung some jute twine through the top and others I put ribbon through to hang from my tree. I also added a few wood beads to the top of a few of them that had just the jute cord. Once they all had some kind of hanger on the top of them, then I just had fun playing around with how I wanted to decorate the fronts. So on this one you can see I'm adding some greenery and one of those wooden snowflakes, and I also added a frosted berry. On some of the other ones I added some cinnamon sticks and some acorns. It's really fun just to kind of let loose and play around, decorate these how you want to. And another tip I have, if you don't want to create ornaments out of these, don't tie the knot at the top of the hanger, leave it open, and you can use these same things to add on to packages for your Christmas presents this year to make them a little bit extra special. And then the person that you're giving the gift to can take that off of the package and hang it on their own tree. Dollar Tree also makes it easy to create another type of ornament. They have these DIY plastic ornaments out. They had these last year and I saw them again this year. The bottom of them unscrews so you can stuff things inside. In addition to some of those, I'm going to use my orange slices, some cinnamon sticks, some of my frosted berries, maybe an acorn or two, and some greenery. Like I said, the bottom of these ornaments unscrew like a lid, and they are just a flat gray color, which is fine. It's a nice neutral color, but I wanted to dress mine up a little more. I started with the first one. I'm using some of this black and white gingham ribbon, and I'm just using a few dots of hot glue until I had the entire base covered. Then I took that same ribbon, I created a simple bow, and I glued it over where the two seams of the ribbons met. Finishing off these ornaments is pretty simple. I just gathered up some of those bits and pieces that I had and I just stuffed it as full as I could. And I tried to make sure that you could see a little bit of everything from the outside. So once I had stuffed in a few of the oranges, if you couldn't see the berries anymore, I tried to shake them around so that you could see everything that I stuck in there. Now for the second one, rather than covering the base of the lid with the ribbon, this time I used one of those garland ties and I just hot glued it all around the base so that you could see that greenery instead of the ribbon. One thing I really enjoy making for every holiday or season are napkin rings. I think it's a great way to dress up your table. I picked out 4 of the darker orange slices that I got from baking them in my oven. I have a piece of twine here that I already added some hot glue to one end to create a point so that it would be easier to string on my beads. I'm using some wooden beads here, and you can use any size that you want. I can't give you an exact number of how many you'll need. What I did was I just strung them on to my twine and then I formed them into a circle. And when I thought it looked like it was the right length for a napkin ring, I just tied the 2 ends together and use that as the base of my napkin ring. And if you're thinking to yourself, but I don't use cloth napkins, so I don't need napkin rings, I get it. I don't use cloth napkins either, and I have no shame in just rolling up a bounty paper towel and throwing them inside my napkin ring. Once the bases of my rings were finished, I took those orange slices and I used my big plastic needle and I poked 2 holes in the center of the orange and it made it look like a button. So what I did after that was I ran some jute twine through one of the holes, I strung it through my napkin ring, and then I brought it back up through the other hole, just like you would if you were sewing on a button. I tied it in the center and I created a bow. Now you could get really creative here. If you wanted to add more color to your napkin rings, you could tie on some ornaments, you could use some different color wooden beads, or you could even string on some jingle bells. I wanted to keep mine more neutral so that I could use it outside of Christmas. I could use this in the fall or in the winter too. And since nothing is being glued onto the napkin ring, if you know everybody that's coming to, say, your Christmas dinner, in the center where you tie that bow, you could create little place cards with everybody's names on it and tie their names onto their napkin ring. And I think that would look really great on a Christmas table. If you need a quick gift for somebody, I think stovetop potpourri is a really great thing to have on hand at the holidays. I'm using my orange slices again and also some cinnamon sticks, and I did go ahead and buy a jar of whole cloves and rosemary leaves. I'm also going to decorate my jar with some fabric, some ribbon, and I have these little red truck ornaments in my stash that are so cute, so I want to tie one of those on also. I'm just using an old sauerkraut jar here. This is sauerkraut that I get from Aldi, but I think the blue and white gingham lid is really cute. I just made sure that I soaked it in some hot soapy water for a while to get all of that smell out. But you could use any kind of decorative jar or even just a mason jar. I started by packing my jar full of cinnamon sticks and the orange slices. Now these orange slices, after they're dried, they don't really have a scent, but once you heat them back up with warm water, they do smell again. After I had my jar full of cinnamon sticks and orange slices, I measured into my hand about a tablespoon of the whole cloves, and I also did about a tablespoon of the rosemary leaves too. Even though the lid to this jar is very cute, I wanted to cover it in some fabric. I started by laying the jar on the opposite side of the fabric, and I made sure that I had enough space the whole way around. Then I folded the fabric on a diagonal, and I folded it in half 2 more times until I had a triangle. I laid the point of the triangle onto the center of the lid, and then from the edge of the lid about 2 inches out, I cut just a slight arc in the fabric, and when I unfolded it, it created a circle that was about 2 inches bigger than my lid. To hold my fabric in place over the lid, I used one glue dot on the top of the lid, and I laid my fabric down, and then I was able to use a rubber band to secure it in place. I wanted to create a tag to add to the top of my jar to let the person know how to use this stovetop potpourri. So I just cut a small rectangle of cardstock, and I'm using my pinking shears just to give it a decorative border, and I also punched a hole in one corner so that I would be able to attach it to my jar. You could also write the instructions on the back side of a regular Christmas tag, but since I already have a lot of cardstock in my stash, I figured I would make it a little bit more special by making a handmade tag. I used a black marker just to create a simple border around my tag, and then I just wrote simple instructions on it saying to empty the contents of the jar into a saucepan, cover with water, and simmer to help make your house smell like Christmas. If you're making this for a gift, you might also want to let them know that they have to keep an eye on it and keep adding water as needed. I used a piece of jute twine to tie on my tag. Then I used a piece of red ribbon and a piece of green ribbon, and I strung my little red truck ornament through those and tied just a simple bow. If stovetop potpourri isn't your thing, you can make regular potpourri too. I'm going to use a bunch of things that I already have on hand. I have my orange slices, my cinnamon sticks, I have a big bag of pine cones. I also have one of the small bags of the decorative twigs that you can get at the Dollar Tree. And I was able to find this scented oil at the Dollar Tree. It has a really pretty orange spice cranberry scent to it. I took everything that I wanted to add to my mix except for the cinnamon sticks, and I placed it all into a 1-gallon Ziploc bag. So I put in my orange slices, my pine cones, and my little sticks, and I added about 2 capfuls of the scented oil to this bag, and I just gave it a good shake to make sure that everything was coated with that oil. The reason I didn't add the cinnamon sticks in is because they already had such a nice scent on their own. I didn't want the oil to get on those. Once everything was coated, then I was able to add it to a decorative basket. Now the great thing about this is once the scent wears out, you can throw it all back into a Ziploc bag, add another capful or 2 of that oil, shake it up again, and keep reusing it. Thanks so much for coming to hang out with me again today. If you need more Christmas inspiration, click one of the videos that I have on the screen. I hope you have a great week, and I'll talk to you in the next one.